Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast with your host, Hannah Hermanson, bringing you real life stories of people who realized their dreams to educate and inspire you to create your legacy of abundance now.
Okay, everyone, I am so excited today. We're hanging out with my soul sister, Stephanie Mitchell. She is the founder of the Rollin Mat. It's a mobile yoga studio based in Atlanta, Georgia. Since the start of her mobile yoga adventure, Steph, aka the Rollin Yogi, has been shaking up the yoga industry by providing well-rounded, community-driven yoga experiences outside the four walls of a studio space. She is the Beer Yogi of Atlanta, and she's also made substantial partnerships with large corporations other than breweries, such as Whole Foods, Keller Williams Realty, AT&T, and Healthsource Chiropractic in Atlanta. She's traveled the world, bringing her creative pop-up studio and concepts to festivals, other breweries, and large-scale events. This year, Steph decided to take all of her knowledge and experience from being a small business owner in the yoga industry and put it to even bigger use. Alongside her public events and corporate partnerships, Steph is a business mentor who serves to assist other yoga and heart-centered entrepreneurs in creating their vision and empire while owning their confidence and truth. She leads monthly workshops in Atlanta and other travel locations on how to mindfully and strategically build businesses. Welcome, Steph.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned, I excitedly exclaimed at the beginning of the show that we are soul sisters because as much as you beer and yoga and business, ironically, we were just chatting before the show, you have a background in higher education and choir, and you're blonde. It's like
yes,
actually sisters.
I totally agree. We have a lot in common.
So I am always interested in how people get from where they were, right? You were working in higher education, working with college students, to where you are now. So give us the highlight reel of your evolution from the 9 to 5 to where you are now.
All right. So I worked for a really elite academic honor society here in my hometown of Atlanta and loved my job. I got to travel the U.S., going to different colleges and speaking to students that were about to graduate from college and really inspire them on what the next steps were and kind of what the world looked like outside of college. So it was super rewarding for me. I'm a wandering spirit, so the travel aspect of it was great. Loved everything about the job, but I had the unfortunate situation of being laid off due to some declining aspects that were going on. So at the time, I really had no idea what I was going to do. Like this was really kind of my big job, my big girl job, and I loved it. So I actually went out west to California to San Francisco and beyond for about 2 months, stayed with friends out there and really came to realize how much the yoga practice has always been part of my life ever since the beginning of college. How much it has healed me at the time and without even really realizing that it had all of these qualities and properties for me. So I practiced with a ton of yogis out there, went to different studios, and I decided that I wanted to get trained and take it to a different level. And while I was in my training, I there also realized that I didn't want to just be an in-studio teacher. I wanted to do so much more. And that's kind of how the whole idea of a mobile yoga studio evolved.
Yeah. Okay. I love that because, same thing. I was working at a college job and, ended up wanting to take my yoga practice longer. It's just so amazing, how those journeys evolve when you just kind of dial in. Okay, I have this opportunity. Maybe you're laid off. Maybe you're miserable in your job. It's like, I enjoy yoga. Let me try that path. So I think especially, I know a lot of yoga teachers are listening, and I think it's really unique, especially that soon in your yoga career, to be thinking outside the walls of a studio. So did you ever, the common practice is to become an assistant or go to a gym and teach there for, $15 an hour and get better at it. But did you ever take a traditional approach to building a yoga business, or did you just jump into the van and take it everywhere with you?
I put the cart in front of the horse, really. I took as many opportunities as I could, more so trying to get out into the community versus being stuck in a studio. Not that a studio space is bad whatsoever. I love practicing being a student inside of a studio space. But I, sought out, there was actually a company within Atlanta that worked with corporations and brought yoga and other different styles of exercise to the corporate workplace, which also kind of transpired my corporate partnership branch that I have to my company. So that's kind of where I started. I started out in the community, but then I also did have my fair share of working in LA Fitnesses, teaching a nauseating number of classes to people that didn't really care about the full well-roundedness of yoga. They just wanted to work out, and then I tried to get, jobs at yoga studios, but because of my business and what I was doing, I was often looked at as competitive. So a lot of times trying to work part-time in a yoga studio didn't quite work out for me. So I just kept growing the rolling mat, took as many opportunities as I could. And then the Beer Yoga started up, which became really popular. I was working at a brewery at the time of my training, and I actually had communication with the public there and asked them what they thought about Beer Yoga events. And they were like, well, if you offered it, we would do it. And I just really started to, that kind of became my baby in the business in a sense, in that I grew it from only 3 people to 30 people.
Okay. This is the nugget I'm picking up. Do or try, be open to a lot of things. And I think something that you are demonstrating that a lot of people are holding back on is to just take the imperfect actions, right? Like, yes. Okay, LA Fitness needs help. Sure, I'll do it. I learn from that. I make some connections. And I think you are just a great example, like you said, of getting out into the community, talking to the people at your job, at the brewery you work at about what you've got going on, because so often the ideas just percolate in our head and we make up all these excuses for why we shouldn't do something or why they won't like it. And so what do you think fueled you or helped you move past that common fear of just taking imperfect action and trying a lot of things when you were growing this business?
I had nothing to lose. And I knew that I had so much to gain. And through everything that I had been through prior to being trained and getting my training and all of the learning and self-development that and self-realization that came from all of that. I mean, I just knew that I had to just do. I had to go out and do. And I wasn't going to get anywhere by being shy and if I taught a class and it didn't work out very well, I learned from that. And typically when you're a yoga teacher, if you mess up, if you're able to have kind of a quick reaction time, it's kind of like when you're, a guitar player on stage, like a musician on stage, if they miss a chord, the audience doesn't really hear it, because they pick right back up. You forget to do one thing, you just you get creative and you turn around and fix it, So I just, I was told in my training that I had to teach basically until burnout in order to earn my keep in the yoga.
Ew. That's not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna quit that school.
Yeah, and I mean it was a great training, and I wouldn't take it back for the world. But
people say this all the time. Like I used to teach yoga, and actually the studio I used to work at just closed overnight. And I was talking to some other yoga teachers, and there's still this common philosophy that it's hard to make money in the yoga business. No one wants to charge too much, and it's not even just yoga, right? It's this servant mentality that school teachers have. I live with one, and he doesn't think that they should earn. I mean, of course, he would like more money, but that's not what it's about. It's about service, right. It's about helping, it's about teaching. And so, what kind of reaction or support do you give? Because I know you work with other heart-centered entrepreneurs, servant leaders. how do you help facilitate the mindset that you can be massively successful in income and still be heart-centered? How do you talk to that shift?
Well, it's really a lot about their own kind of personal visualization and also learning and understanding and believing in the successes that they've already had. So something that was super effective for me, especially when you and I met, was the success journal. You know, journaling in on thinking back to like your earliest memory, like were you a punctual student? Did you do your chores when you got home? To, you know, how you helped out your employee, your coworker, you know, in your first big time job. You know, all of these things that you did along the way that really kind of help you build up to your worth, and knowing that, you know, we are leaders. Like I am a yoga leader. I look at myself as a yoga leader, and the yogis that I work with, that is what I'm trying to help them get into the mindset of, is that we are valuable. I mean, it's just kind of like personal training or therapy in a sense. Like you pay your personal trainer for better physical health. You pay your therapist for better mental health. Yoga kind of wraps both of those into one, I feel. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just really about, you know, visualizing everything that you know you're capable of, being able to sit in that and not feeling ashamed of any failure that you may have, looking at it as a learning thing, a learning curve, and just knowing that like you are valuable. And it's a lot of mindset practices and a lot of visualization routines that, you know, really help them pull out, oh, you know what, like I did this 5 months ago for this person and it changed their life, and I have a deal to prove it. It's like, well, show that, girl, you know?
Yeah. There's so much
past that.
Yeah. Focusing on the successes you have, owning your strengths. You know, like you mentioned, like, back in the day, I was a punctual student. Like when you don't just look at rewarding yourself for the right thing, but like you said, like reward yourself for the chances you took, and it wasn't a failure. You learned from it and you survived it, and I can go help someone else survive something similar. I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of my own experience, because with this business, I mean, I have taken my love of yoga, which is a very mindful, heartfelt, and joyous practice, and merged it with business, which is very gritty, is very gritty, you know, very gritty. Sometimes, you know, depending on what industry you're in, I mean, really doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's competitive, you know, and especially with yoga, like it's very oversaturated market. So I had to really learn, and I had to take a lot of falls. I had to take a lot of fails, and I had to really learn how to balance out this whole mindful aspect of yoga in with being a successful girl boss, the successful entrepreneur, because I knew that I had both aspects. And my getting out there and doing, you know, came from years of already being out there, talking to people, you know, trying to share with them, you know, my worth so that they could see what their worth was, you know, at a young age, fresh out of college, you know, or events that I would plan. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value in just taking time and kind of doing some self-reflection. And a lot of people are scared to do that because of, you know, other things that might pop up, but it's just stuff that you eventually have to face anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Lots to think about here and kind of marinate on. So you have clients that come to you who have both the yin and the yang, the masculine, the feminine, the soul-centered mindfulness practice, whatever, but then they also have this desire and this grit. So what is the first step you ask people or you encourage people to take when they decide, I'm going to take my passion and turn it into a business? What's the first thing you recommend people do?
The first thing I recommend them do is get really clear on what it is that they're wanting from it. So what is it that they want? Where do they see themselves? You know, what it looks like, who's with them, what it feels like, what they're doing, who they're serving, and then the why, you know, like why are they doing all of these things? Because if you're not fully clear, and this is what a lot of yogis I have found, and this is what I struggled with too, is we just kind of come out of training. We're not really taught any other ways of running a business other than teaching in a studio or maybe opening and running our own brick and mortar studio. Well, not everybody wants to do that. Some people do, but not everybody does. But we kind of come out of it like, oh, I want to serve everyone. Like yoga is for everyone. I always say that yoga is for everyone, but not every pose is for everyone, kind of thing. So it's like, you've got to figure out who you want to serve, like whether it's kids, teenagers, elderly, corporate, whatever the case may be. You've got to figure out who you want to serve and what that journey is going to look like and where it's going to take you. Because without a clear visualization, you're just kind of shooting at, an empty playing field, really. You can't just come out and be like, okay, I'm going to serve everybody, and as yogis, that's what we want to do. We want to we see the benefit in this practice. We know how valuable it is, but you've got to have a structured path. And a lot of yogis get intimidated by doing that because they don't want to pigeonhole themselves, if you will. But the fact is, you got to start small, and then that audience will eventually grow into something that you never thought it would,
Yeah, that visualization piece, right? Like working to get clear on what it's going to look like. And I think it takes effort, right, to get to that clarity. So how do you, and I know this is something you help clients get a clear picture in their head of where they're going, because in order to get there, you got to know where you're going. So do you have any tips on how to get more clear? Did that make sense? Are you with me on expediting the clarity process?
So whatever industry or business it is that you're running, I find this to be super effective. And a lot of people might hear this and think like, oh, this is so like yoga. And I mean, it is. It comes from my practice for sure, but anybody could benefit from this. Taking 5 or 10 minutes just to tune out as best you can. And it gets easier over time. But what I find to be most effective is in the morning, don't start by looking at your phone. Don't start by opening your computer and reading your emails. Start by sitting. Start by just sitting comfortably. You can be on your couch. You can be cross-legged. Doesn't matter. Close your eyes or stare and just dim the mental light bulb for a moment and try to let all of it, because you're most fresh in the morning, right? By the time you get to the afternoon and then to the evening, your mind and brain has already started, it's already seen so many things throughout the day. So starting fresh and clean in the morning, just with a brief, breathe, deep breaths, and just dim that mental light will help you, kind of understand what it is, like what your goals are for the day, what your goals are for the week, for the month. And with that dimming of the light, try to get a little bit of, a couple minutes of visualization in there of what do you want your day to look like? You don't even have to start with like your full life. Like, what do you want your day to look like? Or an event that you're going to, or that you're speaking at, like, how do you want to be represented? And just start with it. And people think that, taking this time for themselves, oh, I don't have time to do that. I'm so busy. It's 5 or 10 minutes is like all you have to do to just start the day off with a clear head and a level mind. And then that way you'll be able to prioritize a bit better. And I've always learned too, when you start your day, when you start your list of priorities, do the things that you don't like, especially first.
Mm-hmm. Eat the frog.
Yeah. Get them out of the way. And then that way you can focus on the things that you really love.
Yeah. I think that's such an important reminder. And I had to admit, back when I was working 9 to 5, multiple jobs, I was much better actually at setting aside that time because I didn't want to jump into my phone. I was not as excited about my work. And as an entrepreneur and having a little bit less structure, I really have to force myself, right? Like not have my phone in the bedroom so that when I wake up, my first thoughts are more dim. I like the way that you said that. Dim the light. And if you are rolling your eyes or like Stephanie said, thinking this is so yoga, it's the way our brains work, right? our brains work this way, right? That if we have so much noise and light going on, we will never get to that clarity. And as much as we can do market research and interviews and getting into action, we need that clarity, like clear space in our head for the clarity to funnel in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So good. And I know this is something you work with clients to, build that routine and also get to that clarity more quickly, right?
Yep. It's one of my many exercises that we work on. And everybody comes to me in different phases. Some people are really clear on what they want, but they don't know how to execute it. They don't know like the next steps to take, or, they feel like, okay, well, I know what I want, but I know that I still need to go off and teach like 10 classes a day, to make my yoga mark. And I'm like, no, that's, that's not
There's another way. Let me show you. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the business of yoga is a huge, important aspect that unfortunately is oftentimes neglected in teacher trainings. And I noticed this from the yogis that come to me, and they ask me a zillion questions after one of my events, like, how are you making this sustainable? I had to quit doing yoga and being a yoga teacher and go back to corporate because I wasn't making any money. Like, how are you doing this? Like we were never, we were only taught about insurance. And a lot of times I find that yogis are paying a lot of money for insurance as well. So, it's something that's super important so that we can have effective yoga leaders out in the yoga industry, and not ones that are suffering, because it's not a suffering routine, right? I mean, it's supposed to bring us longevity and all of these wonderful things and balance and sanity. But as yoga teachers, we start losing sight of that, and oftentimes become very unauthentic because we're teaching so much and not to the audience that really well respects us.
Yeah, and that goes back to that sort of servant leadership mindset. Like, you think you're helping people by not charging them, or by teaching all of these classes kind of haphazardly or in. And when you really start to think about the energy that you bring to that space, is it really in alignment with abundance and ease, or are you hustling and grinding and just forcing down dogs left and right? Right.
Well, there's a time for community service, right? For our selfless service, there's a time for that. And that is oftentimes what yoga teachers feel like, okay, well, my services should just be free because this is a selfless service. And that comes from not really understanding their direction, and also not having any sort of idea of their worth. And it breaks my heart, when I see yoga teachers really pounding it and teaching so many classes and thinking that, oh, it's okay that I only charge $5. Like, no, it's not okay that you're only charging $5. Like, you got to own your worth. And that's what I'm trying to strive to help other yogis and heart-centered entrepreneurs themselves, because they're also creative in their own way of, helping people out holistically. So
owning your worth.
Yeah.
It's
yoga boss. Yeah. It can be done.
Well, Stephanie, as our former academic selves, we're reaching the pop quiz section of this show. You've already given us a lot of action steps, but tell us 3 things. I have 3 last questions for you. First one is, what is something listeners can do today in action that will help them get closer to their dream life?
Well, the first one is get out and do, right? I've found, I attend a lot of workshops that are within, the business realm, the yoga realm, but sometimes, I went to a networking event the other night, and it was a room full of attorneys who were all women, and they all had like really amazing stories. And sometimes it's good to kind of branch out of your network and learn what other people are doing, because the more you do, right, the more you do, the more you're learning about yourself, you're learning about other people, you're learning about your potential market. The better the faster you're going to get to more of your visualization in your ideal life. And the next thing would be an action step that you could definitely take today is implementing that 5 to 10 minute mindfulness routine. Try it, 2 to 3 days a week, and then maybe you do it every day.
Yeah. Go out and get around other people.
Go out and do. Yeah, just do. Talk to people.
I love it. And then take those minutes in the morning. Beautiful. Question number 2 is, what's a tangible resource or a gift you would love every listener to get their hands on?
So there's a book that I got a while back, and honestly, I was kind of intimidated to pick it up and start reading it. I didn't feel like it was time at the time. But over the Christmas break, this last Christmas, I finally read it, and it's Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And it is a book or an audiobook or whatever that I think everybody should read, especially if you are, an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs, we are creative minds. We're constantly thinking, we're constantly innovating. We have all of these ideas, and it's basically about, how to live your creative life and be okay with some of the struggle that, you might have to go through. It's a fabulous book. So Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I would definitely recommend that.
Beautiful. Big Magic. And I remember she talks a lot about maybe it was just my own takeaway from that book was permission. Permission to be a little creative or woo-woo or heart-centered or on this good for your own self. Yeah. As an individual. So
yeah. And another thing she mentioned too that really rang true to me was don't feel because when you're starting out on your own and you're running your own business, sometimes you have to work you might have to work a job. Like I bartend on the side sometimes when I first started out. Not to let that affect you in a negative way. You appreciate those moments once you kind of start moving through and becoming successful, and you start seeing things start to work, and you have your triumphs and your successes. So she had talked about a friend who just put all of his effort into writing, thinking that he was just going to be a millionaire after he wrote his first book, and gave up on writing because he didn't make the money that he wanted. So something to keep in mind. You've said it before, you will burn out very quickly if money is your ultimate focus. So it's okay to have,
baby. Yeah, purpose.
Yeah.
Lastly, Stephanie, where can people stay connected with you and learn more about the work you do?
So the best way to get connected with me is going onto Facebook and joining the Rolling Mat community. There I give some, tips, tricks, advice. You can connect with other yogis and heart-centered entrepreneurs in that group. We have conversations, about different business topics, about fun things to do over the weekends. And it's just a really great place to connect with others as well as stay really personally connected with me. So I offer a lot of valuable information on that group. And you can also keep up to date with any new things that I'm implementing in my business or when I might be rolling through your town.
The Rolling Mat community.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart and story today, Stephanie. Listeners.
Thank you, Hannah.
Oh, yes. Always fun. Listeners, I'll be back next week with another inspiring guest that will help you make your dream life your real life. Until then.
You've been learning how to make your dream life your real life with Hannah Hermanson. To get the resources mentioned on today's show and to listen to past episodes, visit www.dreamlifeisreallife.com.